Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show.
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years.
So get ready! I mean, get ready! Are you ready for some football?
You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. A weekly podcast about sports since 2011. With a focus on football. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Merry Christmas. Here we are, 3 days before. Can you believe it? 3 days before the big end-of-the-year holidays are upon us, and we are in a celebrating mood because of Penn State.
Yes.
And multiple facets, but
Yes.
we'll get to that shortly. I'm Joe Mays here with my co-host Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Only our second regular program since the end of the Bulldog Hour, Justin.
Oh, yeah.
Had to take a couple weeks off. One, because you went to the Big Ten Championship.
I did, yeah.
Penn State did not come out on top on that, but
didn't,
I assume you had a good time.
Oh, we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, yeah.
Didn't see a win, but saw a exciting game. I mean, high-scoring game.
Right. And some positives. There were some negatives in the game, but there were definitely some positives, too. So I left there encouraged and got more encouraged as we were eating lunch in the airport on the way home and saw the brackets.
Right.
You know, and we'll get into this in the show, but that's not the end all. But hey, you'll take it when you can get it. And you know, yeah. And then last week we had another good reason to miss the show.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a good reason or not. It was, but it was fun. We took off because I had a birthday party.
Yes.
Not something generally adults have that often, but it was a milestone. As I now joined Justin in the 40-year-old club, just a few days ago, actually. And I do want to take the moment to say happy birthday to my dad, in a milestone club now, 70. 70 years old.
I was going to joke with you. Do you feel old? Because I know the answer.
Because you know
it
the
had
answer
nothing to do with earlier this week.
It's been 10 years of feeling like that. Like very early 30, like turning 30 did not matter. A couple years later, things started to go wrong, and then have gone wrong ever since. So I've gotten used to it by now. That's old news. But yeah, so we had a party at Timeline Arcade in York, which was
a blast.
Which was a lot of fun. I think everyone enjoyed it, and got to play some old vintage games. You know, this like when arcade. I think a lot of people think of the games where you're getting. Well, you used to get paper tickets. Now they go onto the card. That's not what this arcade was. This was an arcade as what you would expect from the 70s, 80s, and early 90s.
Right.
This was cabinet arcades. There were some modern things, a lot of pinball too.
Yeah.
But like if you are in your 30s, 40s, 50s, this is what you grew up with.
Right.
This is what you went to the arcade. This is what it was about. And you pay money to go in, and then all the games are on free play.
Right.
So you don't have to have a card or coins or anything like that.
Right.
Once you pay to go in, you just play whatever you want.
And it was awesome.
And it was a lot of fun. I think the kids had a good time.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it was all of the adults, all the parents that were there that enjoyed it the most because you were playing games that you probably haven't played in a long time.
Oh, dude. There were some games there that I had forgotten about.
Right.
You know, like not
that's the
forgotten
best part
about,
of
but
like that.
I can't tell you the last time I had thought of that game. And just some of them yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then as soon as we left, the girls were already making plans of a return trip.
There you go.
They were there for 2 hours, but that wasn't enough. They wanted more time, and you can get an all-day pass. And actually, if you pay a little bit more, you can go to both their locations because obviously it's different games.
Right.
So you can go to their sister or brother location in Hanover.
Okay.
So York and Hanover kind of relatively close together once you've already made the trek to York. It's not as big a deal to go to Hanover, but you can go hit their 2 locations and play their different games for one set price. And that's probably in the offing once we get out of the miserable months that are approaching of January and February.
Well, we're kind of in it right now. So.
No, December's the best. December's the best. And it's gotten even better, Justin, because Penn State's in the college football playoff.
Yes.
And despite losing the Big Ten championship that you saw, you got to see a college football playoff victory, the first ever game that Penn State has participated in the CFP. Never made it during a 4-team, 10-year run?
I think it was 10 years.
2014 through 2023. First year of the 12-team playoff. We talked a lot about it 3 weeks ago when we were on the show, before knowing about the outcome of the Big Ten title. We kind of laid it out a bit and what was going to happen with the 12 teams and the selections and things like that. But now we're in it. The first round games are over. They were all non-competitive games by and large. Indiana came back at the end, but Notre Dame was in control the whole time. Penn State was in control, despite what I want to say as was not a great performance. The 38-10 win over SMU. They were in control pretty much the entire way. Ohio State dominated Tennessee. That game wasn't even close.
The doors off of
and despite the, two touchdown or 10-point difference,
so
Texas Clemson?
They won by 2 touchdowns.
38-24.
Got to a one-possession game in the fourth quarter, and then they ran for a 77-yard touchdown.
So that may have been the closest game, but it felt like Texas was in charge most of the game.
Absolutely.
And I don't even know. Honestly, the Indiana-Notre Dame game may be next because Ohio State and Penn State weren't really ever close.
I mean, I know I had turned it off, but I know Indiana didn't score the touchdowns.
They scored 2 touchdowns in the last few minutes of the game,
But, I'd say early on, maybe it was the – well, see, it's hard to say. I would say maybe the SMU Penn State one early just because they drove down.
You had 2 defensive touchdowns.
But Clemson scored first.
Right.
So at the same time, there was that. Ohio State blew the doors off Tennessee immediately
in the first quarter.
Immediately. They weren't particularly good games. There's a really good article on The Athletic today, though, of how hold your horses, though. And he just goes through and
the 14
it's like a normal year. The first round games are not usually good. And there have been finals that were not good. And it goes back to the BCS as well. When you went back to the BCS, the average margin of victory was more than one score. And so it's just this is the way it's been. You just remember it differently, kind of. That's because we remember the classic games, and some of the blowouts, but we don't realize, USC beat the doors off people.
Georgia smoked TCU 2 years ago.
Right.
Destroyed them.
Yes. And Ohio State should have beat Georgia in the semifinal.
Right.
They missed the field goal as it hit New Year's.
A terrible kick, too.
Right.
Really bad.
And so yes, there were some
for every great
and that's not to say that this 12-team configuration, the way it is currently set up, is the best. That's not what anyone is saying. But somebody's people are oh, we need to blow it up because these games were bad. No, you don't.
I think the thing that I continue to laugh about is the hypothetical game stuff.
Yeah.
There is absolutely nothing that would prove that Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina would have fared any better in those games.
No. And honestly, the more I have thought about it, the more I think if I had to make a case for one of them, I think I'm making it for South Carolina. Just because they were playing the best at the end.
Right.
Alabama lost to Oklahoma.
6-6 Oklahoma
didn't score a touchdown against them. Yeah, a few weeks ago. Exactly. Second to last week of the season. Well, third to last week because they played Mercer in between.
Right.
But
that powerhouse.
Right. So well, I know their AD is looking at scheduling, because they have Mercer, So
Sure.
I love that tweet that was what are you going to do? Play Mercer twice?
Yeah, there was some great stuff on Twitter.
Oh
I mean,
my
and
gosh, it was
really,
on fire yesterday.
It started with Lane Kiffin
Right.
just running his mouth about the Indiana
Right.
selection going to Notre Dame, then about SMU playing at Penn State.
and Joel
and
Klatt
then-
just burning it to the ground.
Then just crickets when it came to Tennessee that
Right.
night. Well,
Right.
he tweeted about it
Right, let's go
initially.
Vols.
Said, let's go Vols.
Right.
And then they got, I mean, that was a boat race. Like
it was
they
embarrassing.
got destroyed.
On a separate note, how crazy was it that like it was like a 50-50 split in fans in Ohio Stadium?
Yeah. Wasn't like that at Penn State.
No.
Don't think it was like that at Notre Dame.
No. And at Notre Dame would be the most logical.
Right, proximity.
Right. Honestly, the Tennessee one would probably be next because
Yeah.
I know it's
It was
a drive.
It was
but
a
it's
trek
only,
for SMU
right.
to Beaver.
Right.
As-
SMU is tough, and honestly,
Especially
I
when
don't
you
even
can't
know
fly
the
into
general
State College.
size of SMU.
You can't fly into State
Oh
College
gosh,
Airport.
that story is hilarious. But
Well, I just like it even more because it was backlogged with private jets because
Right.
all the SMU billionaire and
Right.
millionaire boosters trying to get in,
Right.
including a professional golfer
right.
and people
well,
from the Pony
it's so
Express
funny
and-
because they like you've probably seen these things on like TikTok or on Instagram Reels or whatever, where they do the things where it's like, oh, the different schools, and like they do the one in Texas, and they always make fun of like SMU for being like the richest and fanciest of the schools in Texas, and having some family that grew up and went to school in Texas, like they're like, yeah, that trends, like, so you have all these private jets coming in, and they can't
Yeah,
get
they
in
fly
because
to
it's full,
Williamsport.
right? And get to the game after it's 14-0.
with 2 pick sixes.
Right.
So, do you have anything to say about the other games at all?
Nothing except like there are. This is one of those cases where there can be multiple things that can be true, and could Alabama or Ole Miss or South Carolina have performed better?
Yes.
Than
They could have.
SMU, like, or Indiana, or yes, they absolutely could have. However, they didn't earn the chance to do that when they lost to bad teams.
When they lost to
Multiple
4-8
times.
Kentucky.
And the beautiful thing about the 12-team playoff is it forgives you for losing one bad game. It forgives you for losing one bad game. Show me a team that had one bad game that didn't make the 12-team playoff.
There
There isn't
do
one.
it. You can't do it.
Right.
That
Before
didn't make it, right?
before the playoff came out, you could have argued that it was Army. Right? Like, like if you're going to say like one now they have 2, but that was after the playoff had come.
Go Navy.
Right. Right.
Sing
So-
second, baby.
But like other than that, there isn't one. And honestly, there isn't a good example of a team that lost twice that got left out. You could argue that it's Miami, but but when you get to 2 losses, now it's okay. And when you get to 3, and listen, if Alabama's 3 losses were to like Georgia, Texas, and LSU,
Different conversation.
right? Like, okay, they weren't. 2 of your 3 losses were to Vandy and Arkansas, and Ole Miss lost at home to a 4-8 Kentucky team.
Right.
No, and third loss, not second loss, third loss. And so when Joel Klatt tweets, basically, if your team's played half as good as you tweeted, you'd be in the playoff. It ends it. It ends it because he's right. He's right. And I know people, oh, well, we didn't get competitive games. You didn't get competitive games when it was those teams.
Right.
You didn't get competitive games when it was those teams.
Well, and also the best thing about the Alabama stuff is they lost to Vanderbilt because they couldn't play defense, and they lost to Oklahoma because they couldn't play offense.
Right.
Like it's not like they always had a bad defense or always had a bad. They had bad
Right.
both sides. But you also saw that from Jalen Milroe last year.
Right.
Like when they were talking about
and when you want to
benching
look at
him-
it, Tennessee's only good win was over Alabama. And then they got smoked by Ohio State. Now, that clearly was like a buzzsaw situation, and I think in that game, in that situation, maybe Ohio State beats anybody last night. In that situation, because it seemed like they were a motivated team on a mission.
Right,
But
is that a good thing for Ryan Day, or is that hey, what were you doing during the regular season when you lost at Oregon?
Well-
kind of okay, but then losing to Michigan at the end,
Right.
Like,
and see, that's a whole different thing too, because I know there are people who are like, administration's behind him. There's a difference though. This is not the NFL, because guess who pays like major college football? It's group funded. Like, it's group funded. When the billionaires walk in there and say, I'm not donating if Ryan Day's still the coach, the administrators can
what are
say
you
all
gonna
they
do?
want.
Right.
They're going to fire the coach. Like, so it matters what people think. As ridiculous as that is, and I know that's a ridiculous model, and it's hard for people to get their head around that. That's the reality of it. And for people who say, that's not it, there are good coaches who get fired all the time because of that.
Yep.
Because of that. Because a donor who writes a big enough check has enough say. That's why Auburn goes through coaches every 3 years.
Right.
They fire guys 2 years after national championships. LSU did the same thing. They
Same
fired
thing.
Ed Orgeron
After they had one
because
of the
they could get
greatest
Brian
teams in
because they could
college
get
football
Brian
history.
Kelly, and they're now worse, and Notre Dame's better.
Right.
Good for Marcus Freeman. I don't mean that because he's Notre Dame, but like, good for him. Like, because he could have gone. Like, maybe he couldn't have. Maybe Chip didn't invite him along, but he stayed instead, and he's in a better spot than Brian Kelly is
Right now, and with that win over Indiana, sure. I'm very intrigued by the non-Penn State games in the quarterfinals.
Oh yeah,
You've got the Rose Bowl featuring Oregon, Ohio State, a rematch, but a traditional Big Ten, Pac-10 game, which is awesome. Then you have Texas
and
against
Arizona State
in the Peach Bowl, and I was impressed by Arizona State.
And again, they have been really strong as the season went on.
Was very impressed by Arizona State in their game against Iowa State. So I think that'll be an interesting game in the Peach Bowl. Then you have Notre Dame, Georgia.
Because also, is Clemson Texas's best win? It is.
Yeah, because they lost to Georgia twice.
Right. So their only like real like ranked win essentially is Clemson.
And they gave up 24 points to them. Like
Right.
Texas is now we heard all year about Texas defense, and the game against Georgia were lower scoring and
Right.
close. Clemson put up 24. Now
Right.
Cade Klubnik and Clemson were getting better towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
So very, very interesting games. I think the best game I think will be Oregon, Ohio State.
I think so.
I expect that to be the best game, but honestly, I can see either team winning the other two. I know people will probably jump all over Texas. I think Texas
that
is
could
in for
surprise people.
a bit of a battle. I'm very, very interested in Notre Dame, Georgia. That is a big
because
time
like
game.
while Georgia has, and I think people are going to be all over Georgia, and Notre Dame has a really bad loss to Northern Illinois. Like,
That is inexplicable,
right.
Because Northern Illinois wasn't
but
even
at the same
good
time,
this year.
right? And their only good win, or I shouldn't say that, their best win was Indiana. And I know people, Indiana wasn't that good. I know, but look at the rest of Notre Dame's schedule. Who was their best win then?
Army.
Probably. Right?
USC.
Yeah. USC should have
if
won a
we're
bunch
gonna-
of games they lost.
If we're going to
including-
use that as a
right.
Penn State good
Right.
win,
No, exactly.
you gotta give Notre Dame credit, but that Notre
Texas
Dame,
A&M maybe, who wasn't
Well,
bad, but like they
but
weren't
they suffered
weren't
the
good.
same issues.
No, exactly.
that the rest of the SEC teams did.
Right.
Yeah. So where that's 2023. We're going backwards in time. So Notre Dame opened at Texas A&M and won that game.
Just a quick side note. I hate how when you Google like Notre Dame schedule or Eagle schedule or Penn State
you
schedule,
don't just get the college.
it
football
just gives
schedules
you all of their games that they've ever played
forever.
basically. Right.
Yeah,
Like
and you got to figure out where. it
right,
is.
exactly.
Yeah, so they opened at Texas A&M, won by 10. Looked like a good win. Then maybe not a good win. Then a good win, and now not. I mean, now just a whatever win.
Yeah, tell me you're a website engineer without telling me. Well, that doesn't watch college football or doesn't watch sports.
Doesn't watch sports.
Right.
Yeah. Then they lost to Northern Illinois at home
Right.
in the second game of the season. But then they smoked Purdue. They smoked Miami, Ohio. They squeaked by Louisville by a touchdown. They destroyed Stanford. They beat Georgia Tech by 18.
Georgia Tech was a solid win.
They destroyed Navy. They destroyed Florida State, which should have been
Right.
everyone expected that to be a game before the season started. Obviously, it didn't go that way. They beat up on Virginia. They beat up on Army. They beat USC by 14, but that USC was driving to take the lead.
Yeah.
I believe take the lead.
Yeah.
And then on back-to-back drives through pick sixes.
Yeah.
So that game was closer than the 14-point final score.
And they were both like full like field pick sixes.
Yeah. They went the entire length of the field. So USC was driving on them. And then they took it to Indiana pretty good.
Yeah.
They were up 27-3
Right.
with a few minutes to play. Indiana got 2 touchdowns late. That's honestly, like you said,
But
that's
even there,
their
even
best
there,
win since at least Texas A&M.
Indiana throws a pick at the 2, and then the next play, Notre Dame runs it 98 yards for a touchdown.
Right.
So
And-
that's at a minimum a 10-point swing because Indiana at least kicks a field goal there.
And while I would love to be like Notre Dame's not as good as their record says,
Right.
when I look at the Penn State game against SMU,
No,
I'm
exactly.
not. I can't go in that direction because I'm sitting there watching yesterday, and I'm like, yeah, we're up 14-0. We have 2 pick sixes.
I know.
You cannot count on that.
Right.
That is not
Right.
something that's going to happen all the time.
No.
Interceptions may not happen every time. Scoring a touchdown once isn't going to happen every game.
Right.
2.
Right.
And then
100%.
another time after you failed to get 1 yard on 4th and short,
Again.
So was I happy that they won when they're up 28-0 at halftime or whatever? Yeah, it was 28-0.
28-0
right?
at
28-0
halftime,
at halftime and 35-3 at the end of the third, whatever it was. Like, was I happy? Of course I was happy.
Right.
But was I sitting there going, we're winning the national championship? Absolutely not. I was sitting there. I was wanted to text you and Adam a million times. Mostly, what is he doing in regards to Drew Aller?
Oh, dude. The first 2 series specifically.
Yes, exactly.
There were guys wide open.
Wide
that he
open.
wasn't-
I don't know what he was doing.
Right.
That the first series when I texted you, I was like, "Why did he not
Right.
throw it to Katron Allen?
Dude.
He's literally standing there wide
so,
open."
So our seats that we sit in are high up, but a couple good things. 1, they are full seats, not just benches, bleachers. And 2, I love that I mean, you are high, but like you have essentially like the end zone tape, right? Like you've got like this view. It's like watching every play unfold in a great way. And there were a couple. It's like, dude. Now I understand that like sometimes your progression is going to take you away from someone. That's not what I mean. Like on that first one, he was rolling out and like Katron's standing.
He was looking right
now,
at him.
Now there's a guy 5 yards behind
Right.
Katron, and so it's
Rifle
not
it
going
in
for a
there.
touchdown. But guess what? He's gonna. Well, he should
Get
catch
close to
it
a
for
first
the first
down.
down, right? Or honestly, run it. Like do something. But like he was missing on throws early. I know it was cold and windy. Like and that may have had an effect, or maybe he just was too amped up or whatever. But like, yeah. It's one thing to miss on throws. It's when it's the decision that's not as like that's more frustrating. Does that make sense? Like the bad decisions are more frustrating than the like bad throw. Like listen, it is freezing and windy and cold. Like if you miss a throw, you miss a throw. Like that's going to happen. But like the decisions, that's when it's like
not
ooh.
to throw.
Right.
When there was a guy, or like there was another one where he kind of like tried to shovel it.
Oh yeah.
I'm just like, look, you are starting over Bo for a reason.
Right.
You have the tools, you have the talent, you put in the work. I trust the coaches that you were better than him.
Right.
At least for the offense they're running right now.
Right,
I get
right.
that. But like as I've watched these games this year, I'm just like, this is not 5-star quarterback play. Like
No.
what it's supposed to be.
No.
This quarterback play is not better than the last year of Sean Clifford to me.
Now, I still come back to at least a little bit of I think we have one true receiver, and he's our tight end.
You're right. I know. Look,
right.
I'm not a Drew Aller hater.
No.
I'm
And
just
I know
saying-
that. I know that.
And I'm glad he's coming back, especially
Right.
when we found out Bo was going in the transfer portal. I was like, well, I hope Aller's coming back because
Or we need to
or
get a transfer.
we would
quarter-
need a transfer, right? So I like Drew Aller, and I know he's I saw a lot of places he was ranked as a top 3 quarterback in the playoff.
Yeah.
Of the
I
12
know.
teams, he was
I know.
ranked 2 or 3. Obviously, Gabriel is number 1.
Yeah.
And watching him in the Big Ten championship game,
Well-
it was not even close that he was
Right.
the best quarterback
Yes.
in college football this year. Like from start to finish, most consistent, most electrifying. Didn't have any real bad games. You know,
Right.
like the game at Wisconsin was iffy, but like
But
what
he
he was
made
able to
big
do
plays
against
that when it
Ohio
mattered,
State
too.
and Penn State,
Yep.
yeah, he was the best. But then next, like they're saying, it's Drew Aller, and
Right.
I'm just like, man,
Right.
I need to see it.
Right.
I need to
And
see it.
I'll tell you what, though. So, like, and I kept telling my dad this, too, because it didn't feel like it because there weren't like the explosive plays a lot, but like we put up a lot of rushing yards on them. They were the 3rd ranked rushing defense in the country coming into the game. Now, I know that's people are like, yeah, but they played in the ACC. I understand, but like they also have an ACC like roster, like so like they're playing amongst their peers, and they had that, and I'm like, so okay. But the other thing that I was really, really impressed with was, and we talked about this after the Big Ten game, not on the show, but Abdul and Dennis Sutton are great at getting after the quarterback. However, in the game against Oregon, and some of this is Dylan Gabriel just being that good, but they seemed so out of control that he broke contain over and over and over again. And then yesterday, over and over and over again, I saw Sutton and Carter stay under control, and the other D linemen. And they were guys just running, like doing pursuit great. Now, did it always work? No. But they were guys running, and then they sensed it, they sniffed it out, and they're just sprinting down the line, taking really good angles and like letting someone else clean up. And like it was great to see, like the adjustment that was made. Because listen, the SMU quarterback is really athletic and can make some big time plays. Every preview article said like he is going to make some ridiculous plays and he's going to make some head scratchers where you're like, what were you doing, dude? And that's exactly kind of like what you saw.
Well,
but like, and thankfully we saw a lot of the head scratchers and
right.
not a lot of the other ones. But like, you could see like him like get out of the pocket and be like, man, if he gets outside there like Dylan Gabriel did, he's going to kill us because he's either going to dump it over or he's going to run or do whatever. Well, we played disciplined along the line and prevented a lot of that. I think Penn State ended up with 11 tackles for loss yesterday. And
they're going to need that in the next game.
Yeah,
they want to win the next game. It's going to
be a little different, but like you know what you're getting in the next game.
They need to turn Boise State one-dimensional,
yeah.
and it needs to not be Ashton Genty running for 250 yards.
Right. So I think Ashton Genty needs 131 to get Barry Sanders.
So I said going into, honestly, the SMU game, I said if we're going to advance to the Final Four, we need to prevent Ashton Genty from breaking Barry Sanders' record. Ashton Genty cannot rush for 131 yards.
So here, this was the concession I made to myself today when I was thinking about this was Ashton Genty can get the record on a long run similar to the situation that we were in yesterday where it's 38-3 or whatever.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And he gets a 75-yard touchdown run
right, because
to break the record.
Because we have backups
and right, and that can be the celebration. And kudos to him. Like, amazing season. A Heisman-worthy season. And, like,
yes.
But, yeah, like, hold him on, like, 18 carries for 80 yards and no touchdowns.
He's going to get his. It's going to happen.
Absolutely is.
But you need to make Maddox Madsen beat you.
He has to beat you. And if he beats you, I'm not going to think this in the time, but okay, but like that. All right, well, that we did what we were supposed. Right, that shouldn't happen. And if they do, they deserve to win. Like they deserve to win, and I won't be happy about that. But if their guys outside of Genty beat us, then we don't deserve to win.
I think the thing here is we should be able to move the ball up and down the field against them. We should be able to. Now, I don't know what our problem has been in a few of these games. Like, I know we put up a bunch of points against Oregon, and I know we scored 38 yesterday, two touchdowns of which were for the defense. But there just seemed to be no cohesion at times. There were bad mistakes by Aller. There was poor blocking by the offensive line.
I felt like we weren't... Like, no one was getting in any rhythm yesterday. Anything. Now, there were moments where it seemed like we did. But, like, there was no sense of rhythm. And that was a little frustrating. But, yeah, I don't know what exactly it was that was doing that, but that was the thing. Yeah, and I look at it. It does not surprise me. I know people are like, well, their only loss is to Oregon. Yes, that's true.
By 3.
I saw Oregon's run defense, and it's not that good. Like, it's not that good.
No.
Now, here's the thing. Oregon has athletes in... Well, I was going to say, and aren't going to be outclassed. But honestly, in this matchup, they're like talent-wise, Ohio State has more talent.
I think Ohio State's going to beat them.
I think Ohio State does too. And then
If they play like they did last night.
what did I say to you though a couple Sundays ago when we saw the brackets? And I said I would love nothing more than to spend my day on New Year's watching the other games, drinking everybody's tears of Penn State had the easiest route.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we did.
Yes, we
On
did.
to the
Thank
semifinals, baby. Like,
So we'll see you, Georgia and Notre Dame.
right. Hey, and oh gosh, I don't know if my block can handle that. But
So the reason I say Penn State should be able to put up
yes,
points, they gave up 45 points to Georgia Southern, not Georgia, Georgia Southern, 37 points to Oregon, 24 points to Washington State, 30 points to Utah State. They only gave up a touchdown to Hawaii.
who's one of the worst teams?
They gave up 24 to UNLV, 24 to San Diego State. They kept Nevada and San Jose State to 21. They won by 4 points against Wyoming. That was a weird game. They just they've been playing better defensively. They beat UNLV again,
Right.
and they won that one 21-7. They did not have a tough schedule. They haven't been tested since the Oregon game by a really strong opponent.
Right. And that's
UNLV
not-
is probably their best 2 wins there.
Yes.
So, but Boise State is used to being the underdog and counted out. This is this is as much their turf as it is ours at the Fiesta Bowl. Boise
Also
State's
undefeated.
3-0 there, and has probably the greatest college football game I've ever seen. At least that wasn't a national championship game, because that Texas USC game
that was
is
crazy.
hard to top after we
Yes.
watched Penn State win
Yep.
the Orange Bowl.
I watched it
I
I think in like a TGI Fridays or a Damon's, like in
Kelly, me, and
Georgia.
Adam watched it from our hotel in Fort Lauderdale because we had left Miami and went to Fort Lauderdale, stayed over, and left from there the next day. So we watched that in the hotel room, and
That's awesome.
one of the greatest games ever. I think Kelly was trying to fall asleep, and Adam and I, they're just like watching, like, holy crap, what are we seeing? Vince Young. So I certainly hope Penn State doesn't underestimate them. It felt initially that but I feel like Penn State was like that all year, that they're not a first quarter team.
No,
They are not a
No.
first quarter team, which is frustrating because if you get behind, it's going to be
hard with a team that can run and grind
That
it
can
out,
run
and
the
is
ball,
going to
yeah.
love it. One of the interesting things, and you know this, I'm sure you're aware of this, maybe not the exact numbers, but like over their last 40 some games, Penn State is 36-1 as the favorite, and 0-6 as the underdog. Currently, they are the favorite. And somebody's like, it's actually like somebody's like, oh, Penn State is an enigma. He's like, no, it's actually the exact opposite of that. They are exactly what they are supposed to be. Like every game they're supposed to win, they win, and every game they're supposed to lose, they lose, which is good a lot of the time,
Right.
and bad a very few but very frustrating part of the time.
You'll win a lot of games, but your fans won't feel good about it.
Right, exactly. That winning all the games you're supposed to is great when you're Georgia. Like, like, oh, hasn't been an underdog in years, Yep, well, that'll do it. But we're not there yet. So, and again, style points are out the window. That's the beauty of this. You don't have to do super great. You just need to be able to win. And in order to do that, you're going to have to contain Ashton Genty. He obviously is a generational running back. He's doing ridiculous things. Their quarterback and passing game have shown some similarities to SMU in the sense of they can make some plays, especially when you're selling out to stop Genty, but they'll also make some mistakes. He's made some mistakes that have cost them this year. Penn State needs to force them. And look, you get 2 pick sixes, that would be amazing, but like you can't bank on that. No. I don't know that I've ever been at a game where that happened.
Well, it's going to come down to...
But you need to be able to force them to throw. And here's the thing. The Penn State offense can do their part by scoring.
Right.
If we are able to score,
Get on the board first.
right?
Force
if
their hand.
If we're able to score and force their hand and get the ball out of Genty's hands, now you've really done it. Now you're in a good spot. Oh, and your pass rushers start to get free reign, man.
And you can see what happens when you get pressure. Even if you don't get the sack.
Watching that game, you're just like, Abdul Carter's a top 5 draft pick. They couldn't block. They couldn't hold him
right
to stop him from getting.
And
to
they
the
finally were throwing some flags because they were doing it so much. So 2 things. First, and my dad said this, and I agree. The ideal scenario for everyone that hates the SEC is Arizona State wins and Notre Dame wins.
Yeah.
Because
I'm all for it.
Then it's bye-bye.
Oh, my God.
See you later.
Can you imagine?
They don't even there's no teams in the Final Four.
Right.
So could you imagine also having 2 Big Ten teams in there and then Arizona State and Notre Dame?
Oh, my gosh.
I honestly don't know who I want to win the Oregon-Ohio State game because right now Ohio State scares me more than Oregon does.
Right.
And maybe that's recency bias.
Right.
Because we just saw Oregon beat Penn State, which sucks. And honestly, I feel like we were in a better position to beat Ohio State than we were Oregon.
Yeah. I mean,
but that one was at home, and the other one was neutral.
Right.
And the final one would be neutral. So, but that's way in the future.
Right.
I'm mostly concerned about Boise State, though.
Yeah.
There is part of me looking ahead to if we win Georgia or Notre Dame. That's a key marquee
Right.
game, no matter what.
Right. I'm also interested to see though, because so Texas, like we said, hasn't beaten anyone. Right? They beat Clemson. Is that's their best win. They lost to Georgia with their backup quarterback, but again, Texas hasn't beaten anyone. So okay, what is Georgia gonna do? Because I think I don't know how good Notre Dame is either. But how's a backup quarterback gonna do against Notre Dame? Right? Because
I think it's a very realistic possibility that both of them lose.
Georgia
and Texas.
Yeah, no, I agree. Oh my gosh.
I don't like
Lane
it.
Kiffin will delete his account.
Maybe I won't even say it because I don't want to jinx anything because I don't want to be on here the next time. Well, the nice thing is the next time we're on here, we're not talking sports.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. That's a little spoiler for episode 409. It has not come to fruition what we had wanted it to be.
Right.
We reached out to Audrey from The Athletic. Have not heard back. It's kind of crazy busy with her right now.
Well, and with Penn State winning, kind of makes that even more busy.
Right. So it probably wasn't going to work out. And maybe she'll be like, yeah, sorry, it just wasn't going to work then, but maybe in the future.
Right.
And it won't have the fun 409 aspect to it, but that's okay. I would still love to talk to Audrey.
Oh, yeah.
We did book another non-sports guest, and she will be joining us in 2 weeks on Sunday, January 5th. And it is going to be Alexa from Berks Nostalgia, which is one of my favorite websites. And if you were born or spent any time in and around Berks County and you want to relive, I mean, she honestly posts stuff from the 1800s, but she focuses a lot on the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s around the Berks area, or stuff that maybe was started then, but even lingered when we were here, Justin, in the late 90s. I mean, you were down here visiting and around more often, but stuff that people like me remember from the 80s and 90s for sure. She has a great site called Berks Nostalgia, berksnostalgia.com. She's kind of like a local historian. She's on one of the boards for the Pagoda. I don't know if it's the Pagoda Foundation. I'll get more information as I do my research over the next few weeks to welcome her on. But I just thought it would be a fun change of pace for us to talk to someone outside of the sports world. And she was at the top of my list, and she has agreed to come on the show. So that will be episode 409 on Sunday, January 5th. The last thing, Justin, I want to say about Penn State is that I don't ever want to hear anyone say that home field advantage is made up, that it doesn't exist.
Right.
And there are a lot of a lot of SEC schools, I think they don't believe the Penn State hype, even despite Auburn coming there 2 years ago and them all saying that it's real, and all the Big Ten teams always saying that they want to play there, but they don't want to play there.
They want to play there because it's one of those experiences that you have to have.
Because they said when you walk out of the tunnel as the visitors, it's not something you can comprehend until you do it.
Right. So I think I sent you the clip today, and you may have seen it before, but the clip of the SMU sideline reporter saying the radio guy saying have to yell in the ear of the people down here that I'm talking to on the sideline. It's like I can't imagine like calling a play to the 10
and letting
other guys.
everyone else know.
Right.
Well,
and
you
then trying
sent
to
me-
communicate when they're not in the huddle.
You sent
like-
me that clip of them like kind of were like, I can't believe they're in a huddle, and then the other
Right.
guy was like, I think they have to be.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, there absolutely is home field advantage. That's why the college football playoff deciding the first round games would
love
be
it.
at college campuses was the best decision. And if they could figure out the bowl stuff, the second round, the quarterfinals should be at college football campuses, so that if buys remain after this 12-team field, if they go to 14 teams or whatever, the teams that get a bye do get to host the next round, because that's the way it should be.
Right.
These teams should be hosting those games.
Right.
Absolutely. And you saw it this weekend.
Right. And I wouldn't go as far as saying, like, there were some people who were like, well, these teams get penalized because they don't get a home game. No. They don't get penalized because they have to play one less game.
One less game, right. One less wear and tear.
It's like they were guaranteed to be in the next round. That's a big win, However, I understand, like, it is awesome. And, like, don't get me wrong, it wouldn't be that great for me, my rooting interest, but, like, how cool would it be if Penn State was going to Boise? Like, that would be insane. Or what if Texas was going to Arizona State?
Penn State at the blue turf.
Right.
There's a once in a lifetime opportunity,
right.
because that's not happening again.
Right,
These
exactly.
teams have never played.
Right, exactly. So, like, there are things like that. Yeah.
Home field means so much in college football that when you go to basically any bowl game that isn't the Rose Bowl, and that's not even a home field thing, that's just like an aura thing.
Right.
It's scrubbed, it's sanitized.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're playing at an NFL stadium. It doesn't matter because most of those are smaller and less. I don't know, less hostile than the college campus stadiums are, because they're built for massive amounts of people.
Right.
They said Kevin Jennings played in front of 32,000 people at SMU.
Right.
Like, that's the crowd that they get at SMU.
That's the capacity.
That's the size of
That's
the
the
stadium.
capacity. Right.
And then they said they were like, they could fit basically almost over 3 of those stadiums.
Right.
In Beaver.
Right.
So I feel like the CFP is going to make the mistake of going to 14 for like 2 to 4 years after this 2-year cycle. Just go to 16 and give us what we want. Right. No buys. First round of 16 and round of 8 at the higher seed, the better team seed wise.
I do think they should kind of follow more of the college basketball idea of let the conferences decide how they want to determine their champion, and it's going to be conference championship games because there's too much money to be made for it to not be that. But let them decide, and that's your automatic qualifier. But like, I think the idea that the buys go to certain teams, I don't like that. Well, you could solve that if you went to 16, like, and no one gets the buys.
No one gets
like,
the buy, yeah.
I did hear someone say like they think you should have the reseeding like after, like so that you reseed after each round, so that like if there is like a big upset, like they go to the 1 or like so that there's things like that.
I would prefer reseeding, but my bigger thing is I don't think the conference championships should get the top 4 spots. That
no, I
seems
agree.
Really
I think
weird.
you should be an automatic qualifier, but it shouldn't be required that you get it.
However, I've also had this discussion with you about the NFL, where I don't think the top 4 division teams should get the top 4 seeds.
Right.
I think it gets you into the
So-
playoffs. I don't
so-
think it should guarantee
so
you
what you're
hosting
telling
a
me-
game.
What you're telling me, I believe, is that you think the NBA has it right in the sense that there are teams that make it, but they do not give home court advantage based on division winning. They do it off of the record. Now, there are few it's usually the first round where it might come up. But like the winner of one of the divisions may win a division but have a worse record than the first like at large, team that makes it.
I honestly didn't know the NBA did that.
I believe they do. But it only comes into play really in that first round almost ever,
I understand like college basketball doesn't reseed, obviously, and that's what kind of makes it fun.
And I understand that because of the sites. Like you couldn't.
Yeah, you can't. So, but I think if you go to 14, or I prefer 16, and get rid of the buys, I think you in college football you can reseed like the NFL does. I think that's the whole point of wanting to be the first or second seed.
Right.
Is always having the supposed easier game hosting that game if they go to 2 rounds of hosting. I think that's a fair way to do it. You use the CFP rankings 1 to 16, make it unless the guaranteed conference champs are not in the 1 to 16. And I do think it needs to be the Power 4 plus at least one group of 5 team. I think that's the
I agree.
fairest way to do that.
Yeah.
I honestly, if they go even farther, every conference champ should make it.
Yeah.
Sun Belt, like, I don't care. You got to have more than 16 teams, though, because you can't have, like the SEC and Big Ten second place teams not making the field because you guaranteed spots to all of. It's just that's much more closer to the college basketball way of doing it. And obviously, I know
Well, you
can't do 68 teams in,
I like how
college football.
But like, what do they do with? And I know again, it's different, but the FCS does this.
16 teams, right? Or is it 32?
I think they do 32. There might be some buys.
Division
though.
2
So, like,
has some buys.
Okay, Division 2 has some buys, but like they already have this. They already have it.
Roadmap of how to do
Right.
it. And I don't know if Division 2 has reseeding or anything, but I just 12. Look,
I don't think so. I think they have like a straight bracket.
BCS was a start. 4-team was the next step. 12-team was a smaller. Well, I mean, it's a big step, but I feel like they could have just gone. They could have just gone to 14 or 16 initially. We also could have started this 2 years ago if Kevin Warren and whoever else, they still had these. They felt indebted to the bowl games, and like I get it. I understand you're trying to keep them alive.
I did hear a thing today that was funny because like the Big Ten, Kevin Warren was like one of the like sticking in the mud that like held this up so long, and it has this year it has benefited the Big Ten. Like the Big Ten got 4 teams in. The Big Ten has 3 teams in that are in good shape and will get at least 1 through because there are 2 that play each other.
hope too.
Right? Yeah, I hope to.
Oh man, could you imagine SEC if it would be somehow Penn State versus Oregon or Ohio State for the national championship?
Or even right. So if I had to pick one, and this isn't because I want Notre Dame, but imagine if Texas won, the team that lost twice to the best team in the SEC.
Oh, and Notre Dame beats Georgia?
And Notre Dame beats Georgia. And so you have the second place Texas team, second place SEC team in Texas getting through. And, man.
No. Screw it. Penn State, Arizona State for the national championship. Be careful what you wish for.
Right. That would be wild.
Hey, Penn State would have to beat Notre Dame or Georgia, so I don't want to hear it.
Right.
Like,
well, and Arizona State would have beaten,
right.
like,
yeah.
Texas.
You would have
and
earned that.
Ohio State or Oregon.
Right.
Like,
you earned
right,
that.
right.
Whoever, last thing I want to say, because I do want to get going.
Right.
Last thing I want to say is, we are getting closer and closer to an NFL style playoff, and at no point,
Which, by the way, first round games are almost always double-digit wins or double-digit margins. That was in that article too.
But what my point is here, before there were 7 teams that made the playoff, when the 6th seed miraculously made it to the Super Bowl, no one was like, they had an easy path. Right. Or they didn't deserve that. And you know why? Because they did it on the field. Right. It doesn't matter. No one remembers who they played.
Right.
They won the Super Bowl. That's it. End of story. They were the best team in the NFL that year. I don't care if they made the playoffs at 9-7.
Right.
Because they won 4 games then.
Right. Right. If you're telling me that, like, well, this isn't the best way to determine who was the best team all year. Okay, well then just go back to where you voted on people, and
right,
like it just was random.
It didn't matter at all.
Because that's the system that's how that was.
You mean how Penn State had 3 undefeated teams in 6 seasons and never won a national championship?
Yeah, exactly.
Or we can go back to high school football where Wilson went 44-2 over 4 years and didn't have a chance to play for a state championship because it didn't exist at the time.
Right.
Yeah, I'd much rather see it play out on the field. And this is much better. And we can debate the merits of selections and who get to play, and we could always be tweaking it to make it better. But in the end, playing it on the field is what matters. And whoever is raising that trophy on January 20th earned it and is the best team in college football this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, I know we like to say when it was the 4 teams that one of the semifinals was like the national championship, especially 2 years ago when Georgia blew out TCU. Right. Everyone wanted to see Georgia, Michigan, I guess, because TCU upset Michigan, right?
Yeah, because they knew about the cheating and they changed their play calls.
It all comes back around.
Right.
Huh? So, win your games, keep winning. The last team to win is the best. That's the way it works.
Right.
And we're down to 8 teams, and Penn State's one of them, and I couldn't be more happy about that.
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot of. We could have talked a lot about NFL too, but got things to do after this show, so want to get moving. I'm holding on by a thread, I think, in fantasy football. Yes, I am projected to win. All I need is Josh Jacobs to outscore Chase McLaughlin tonight, and I think I'll move on to a championship against my brother-in-law. I think, but he has Jalen Hurts. We'll see.
That one hurt him today.
We'll see what happens. Although his backup is Geno Smith, who put up 24 points today. So, but he has Saquon. So who do the Eagles play next week?
Dallas, who was eliminated from the playoffs with the Eagles loss today.
Ooh, I need the Cowboys to come through in a big way next week for me.
I hate you.
Once again, happy birthday to my dad, who celebrated just a few days ago. We won't be back till January 5th, which will be just a few days after the birthdays of my nephew, Logan, turning 6, and my sister as well, getting closer and closer to the 40 Club as well. So happy early birthday to them. I hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas and a safe and happy New Year. We'll be back in 2025, like I said. Episode 409 is January 5th. We are taking a little bit of a tangent and talking about Berks County and history with Alexa Freeman from Berks Nostalgia, berksnostalgia.com. If you don't know about it, you definitely should find them on the web and across social media. She does excellent work, and I cannot wait to talk to her about it. Anything from you, Justin?
No, that's it.
All right.
Oh, congratulations to the Penn State women's volleyball team.
Yes.
Won
Thank
their
you.
8th national title.
Won the national title just like an hour before we started the show here. First since 2017. They also had a 4-peat right after I left school. They won 4 in a row. They got their 8th overall today, beat top-seeded Louisville at Louisville 3-1 to win the national championship. Absolutely awesome. Congratulations to those ladies for a great season. I think they were, 34-2 or something like that?
Yep.
Took down Nebraska, and that took down Louisville. Only thing that would have made it sweeter is if we could have beaten Pitt.
But
they choked.
Yeah,
so,
they choked in the semifinals.
Couldn't even make it to the championship. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining us on episode 408 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Have a great holiday season, and we'll see everyone back here in 2 weeks. For Justin Raffoff, I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. Woo-hoo! You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your email to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as the Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time.